working with the families to rebuild that understanding that we're all in this together. And without that togetherness, they're missing a key part of what I think the schooling experience should be. If we want lifelong learning, then schools should be a hub for lifelong learning, and anyone can be a part of that experience. Finding that time to really understand what a parent is experiencing and how that might influence what the student is experiencing, that's the biggest difficulty at the moment.
Matt Pitman, a multi-award winning head of school, 2024 Most Influential Educator, and the author of the Connection Curriculum, brings visionary leadership and deep insight into student well-being and community engagement. A 2025 Australian Council for Educational Leaders New Voice in School Leadership and a leading voice in positive education, Matt is reimagining how students connect in the 21st century.
Any opportunity to have a difficult conversation, as challenging as they are, and as much as the little voice in my head says, you don't want to have this conversation, they are valuable, and you can only improve by just doing them and throwing yourself into it.
So nice to have you here and have this conversation with you. I'm really curious to learn more about you and what you do. So you live in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, I do. I live in Melbourne, and I work at a school in the western suburbs, which is the growth area, I think you would call it. It's where a lot of the new developments are. Really multicultural area, which is really enriching to kind of work with different communities and have different experiences and different cultures. It adds a little bit extra to the value of, working in a school every day.
And tell me about your latest passion. What is your latest passion that you bring like from home to work? Is there something like that?
I think it's something that I've been pursuing for a couple of years now. And it's just, we had some really significant lockdowns during COVID in Melbourne, some of the longest in the world. And there's just been this lingering disconnect between families and those who work in a school, and stuck in the middle of that disconnect are students. So my reason for coming in every day, and one of the things that I get to do within my role, is to look at ways to rebuild that connection and make sure that we're not just talking about family school partnerships, we're living them. And that's, more than teaching a great class or, having a great meeting or whatever it might be. It really is, working with the families to rebuild that understanding, that we're all in this together. And without that togetherness, students they're missing a key part of what I think the schooling experience should be.
Yeah, most definitely. Is there a specific framework that you follow for the families? Is it individual meetings with the families, or is it like full meetings with groups of families?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. I think initially, so one of the things that our junior school just completed was for new parents and new families joining us in year 7, because we're a secondary school. So there's the big parent information nights, and then there's, as things arise and as questions are tabled, there's your one-on-one, your more intensive meetings. And I think one of the biggest challenges is finding the time to allow parents to not vent, but share what's concerning them in a safe place, and then be able to make that actionable. That's the biggest challenge of those smaller scale meetings. And it's really, really rewarding, but it is something that within the big scope of school and teaching and going off to classes and managing wellbeing and all kinds of things, like finding that time to really understand what a parent is experiencing and how that might influence what the student is experiencing. That's the biggest difficulty at the moment. Is you can share a lot of information with a big cohort of families, but some of that, there's a limit on how much you can share effectively. And then one-on-one, there's just that time factor. And so it's, I guess, something I'm trying to look at is what's in the middle, and what are we not exploring? What have we not uncovered? Where's that sweet spot where it's not hundreds of parents, but it's not just one family. And how can we get some really useful data from those parents so that, it's not just for 6 hours the students are here and we have a great understanding of that, and then for 18 hours they're at home and the parents are witnessing that. We need to have some kind of bridge so that we can communicate those differences and those challenges. And it's not easy, and I don't have the specific answer, an answer that I'm happy with yet, but that's part of the challenge, I think.
I think you're looking into it and you're looking for answers, which means that you're almost there. Because there are lots of people who disregard this part of the process, like leaving the parents outside and trying to work with the students alone. And this might be the missing link.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's, that's parents are so significant, or carers or guardians, or, just those close adults have such a significant impact. And I think quite often we're quick to draw on data of the negative impacts when it's not going well and students are not being supported. But I think there's some incredible parents out there that don't feel like they can come into the gate, and they feel like they're on the outside, and that's where their role lies. And I think we need to look at ways of, within your child safe policies, and making sure that schools are not just letting whoever on whenever, but where can we find the middle ground so that parents can be learners as well. Because if we want lifelong learning, then schools should be a hub for lifelong learning, and anyone can be a part of that experience.
Can you remember one particular case where you were, like, your practices were informed by a parent? This might be useful for other leaders.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. I think there's been a lot of parents who have opened my eyes to something that seems really obvious when they sort of make it, you aware of it, but it's that tunnel vision that comes with working in a school. You become, and even in leadership, having your portfolio, if it doesn't fit within your portfolio, it usually fits within someone else's. And I think there's been a couple of times that parents have explained their situation, and then how that encompasses their child, and then that has been incredibly eye-opening in terms of, well, here's a policy that or a process that we thought worked really well and that really suited us at school, but it worked in complete opposite for families. And by making a small change, could we make that work? And I think there's a lot of opportunities to look at that with even things like uniform and attendance, and trying to, one of the big changes with parent conversations has been video conferencing. It's like, my personal opinion is that it's not as powerful as sitting across from another person. But if the trade-off, for some parents is that they cannot attend at all, then having a conversation, despite it being on video, is closer to the perfect kind of what we were aiming for. And so there's parents, I think, when they come in out of care and they come in respectfully and they want to work with the school and work with you as the leader, there's lots of little things that you can gain from being flexible as the educator, but also understanding, that on the other side of that table is another educator. They're just not in that formal role. They're trying to do the exact same thing you're doing, just without the structures and without the building. Like, everyone wants their young person to learn, and flexibility is the key. And that's what parents have been able to show me when they've come in and understood the way things are working, but have been able to perhaps stretch my thinking on why it happens like that. It's often the why, not the what or the how, but the why do we do this? And if you can come to an agreement on, the purpose of a particular policy. I think then you can make it fit to the humans rather than just fit to the system.
And how do you think this has helped you understand the students better? Like moving on to the students now.
Yeah.
How have the parents helped you understand the students, not the parents?
Yeah, I think there's always a moment when you meet a parent where you get a flash of answers to questions, and they're not necessarily questions that you've asked out loud, but they're questions that live deep in your head. And you work so closely with these young people, and sometimes, especially teenagers, they just make decisions and they do things, and sometimes you just sit and question, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
What was the motivating factor there for that choice? And then sometimes you meet parents and you go, oh, well, that's why, because of this is their influence. And I think sometimes that can be a challenge, but often the parents are able to illuminate and articulate the reasons for why something may or may not be getting done, or what a learning challenge is that a student isn't able to put into words. And I think that's the real value of a strong connection with parents, is that when you spend 13, 14, 15, 16 years with your child, you understand their personal language and their intricacies. And that's not necessarily something we have at school. And so when you can almost decipher what they're saying or decode it, it makes, I guess it adds a layer of understanding to what the student needs to be successful in their learning. It can go the other way, and it can be too overly protective, or it can be limiting, and there's, especially with teenagers, there's always that push and pull of, they want to be independent, but they also want to be cared for, which is a really challenging mix. But when you have parents working with you in partnership, you have less general questions and you have more specific questions, because you have a lot more information and background to be able to work with. And I think the more specific you can get with your questionings, the more effective you are as an educator.
And this deeper understanding of the student also makes the connection better.
Yeah.
So when you have the whole, it's like you have the whole picture, not the whole picture, but big part of the picture when you meet the parents and you listen to them.
Yeah.
So I think with this process, you have developed your listening skills, not your lecturing skills, right?
I think it's the ability sometimes to bite your tongue and just let somebody speak. There's been many experiences that I've had where, a parent or a student or another staff member has decided, or even role played in their head, how they think a conversation is going to go. And so I think sometimes it is that active listening, and sometimes it is just letting them work through that with you in the room, and then directing the conversation from there towards, well, what are we actually here to talk about? And I think the rehearsal of how a conversation will go is often the thing that turns conversations with parents or staff, those difficult conversations, that's what turns them into an issue. If you don't let that initial process of putting everything on the table, relevant or not, if you don't allow them to do that, you don't allow that anger or that frustration to dissipate, and you basically find yourself in the middle of it. It takes time. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to actually what the core issue is. But yeah, the listening and the being able to prompt a conversation gently back on track, they're things that come with time. And it's certainly something that has improved over my career, but there's always more to do. And I think every conversation with a parent or a staff member, or any opportunity to have a difficult conversation, as challenging as they are, and as much as the little voice in my head says you don't want to have this conversation, they are valuable, and you can only improve by just doing them and throwing yourself into it. And I think that's probably something that I find with graduate teachers out of university. That's one of the biggest concerns, is that a parent is upset or a staff member is upset. And I think it's helping them to understand that it's okay for them to be upset.
Yeah.
And part of your job is to let them share why they're upset, and then look at, well, in amongst all of that, what actually are the things that need to be done. But you can only do that if they share. And I think getting over that initial fear of, well, they're going to be upset on the phone or in person, and supporting them to make those calls, that's really important. And I think it would be really beneficial to teachers who are starting out now to have their leaders sit by them and coach, or even just be that support and hold their hand as they make those initial conversations, because that's learning. When you are being, sometimes it feels like you are being attacked. I don't think that's the right wording, but you can usually find common grounds.
And have the parents like feel they have this safe space where they can express anything, because this might be their only opportunity.
Yes, correct.
I mean, for us, for leaders, for teachers, there might be multiple opportunities to say something to the parent. Whenever I feel like something is wrong with one student, I just call them and text them and say what I want to say. But this, when does a parent have the opportunity to express what's happening in their head or in their house?
And I think it helps them, I guess, conceptualize what's happening at school, because there's a lot of instances where students will come home and claim that they're not being supported, and that's a fairly normal reaction when something doesn't go your way and you're a developing young person. You think the world's against you. But I think allowing that time and creating that psychologically safe space for the parents shows them that, well, this is the environment that my child is in every day. And so I actually feel much more comfortable about them attending. And I know that even if they come home upset, like, they are being cared for and they're being, treated fairly. It's just, they just feel they're not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this connection is really important for me. That's why I've stayed in this conversation for so long, and keep asking questions. Now, tell me more about, you were voted the most influential educator in 2024, right?
I was, yeah. So I think it was a list of 30 to 40 educators in Australia. Yeah. And I was very fortunate to be named amongst them, which was very surprising, but it's very humbling.
Yeah. Did you ask yourself why?
Oh, of course. I think it came at a time where I was not feeling influential at all, which I think is mostly how these things go. I was really struggling with a particular aspect of my own leadership, and trying to figure out why I was doing what I was doing, and where I wanted to be, and asking myself all of those philosophical questions. And then I was, when they announced it, it just came at the wrong time for me in that personal challenging part of the journey. But it also helped me step out of or away from myself a little bit, and recognizing that other people had made this nomination, and it had been deemed good enough to find myself on the list. Like that's what that helped me get out of that spot, I think. But it's public recognition is not something that it's very new. And I think it's in the last sort of 12 months, I think, having a book published and maybe being a little bit more present on social media, and then, the influential educator. And now I can't just hide away at my school and just be in my position. I'm fortunate to have people that are now asking me questions and looking for guidance, in a much broader audience of people, and it's really new. It's a little bit scary sometimes, but it's very fun, and it's great to have an influence sort of here at school during the day, and then be able to have a conversation with somebody across the other side of the world, of a night, and continue that process of learning for myself, and looking at, who do I want to be? Like, what kind of leader do I want to develop into? Because I certainly feel like that's something that changes a lot.
And what do you think happens when somebody steps up and says, I need advice, I need your advice, I need your input here? What happens in Matt?
Well, it depends on what kind of box it fits into. I think I'm pretty good at admitting that I don't know everything, and certainly that my advice is just based on my own experiences, and it is my perspective, and I'm not right all of the time. I think it's just like, if someone was to come to my office and ask for my advice here, I would use our school policies, and our understandings, and our culture and vision and values, and all of those kind of things. And I think it's what I've had to do outside of this school is create those kind of things for myself. So what are my leadership values, and what's kind of my mission? And then if somebody was seeking out some advice, or wanted to have a discussion with me about a topic, and I felt like it was something I could add value to, and it aligned with those things, just like it would at school, then that's when I feel like I'm most effective. I certainly would never turn down the opportunity to have a conversation about learning, because that's what I'm passionate about. But I think I'm still figuring out who Matt, the leader outside of the school, is, and where I might be able to add the most value to people, rather than just add to the noise, because there's a lot of voices. There's a lot of fantastic voices, especially with education communities on LinkedIn, and Blue Sky is fairly promising, and there's lots of avenues to share, and to have those discussions. And so it's just, I'm still trying to figure out, where can I add to those discussions that I really enjoy, that is really authentic to how I think, and how I like to do things and lead, but doesn't just add to the pile. So it's tricky. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. But don't you feel that every time you give advice, it's like giving advice to yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's always, no matter who is on the other side of the conversation, whether it's in person or digital or what have you, it is always based on my experiences. And so I think it is a bit like speaking, into the mirror, and looking at a younger version of yourself, even if that other person is older, and just saying, well, this is how I experienced it, and this is what I have learned from that experience, and I can pass that learning on to you, for you then to shape it, and make it your own.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell me about a practice you have, either personal practice, like daily practice, that helps you get motivated, stay motivated, and make changes in your life, not just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I like to read a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's the best way I think I can explain it is, there are times when I don't want to read, and sometimes and it's not because I'm not enjoying the book I'm reading, or it's just I'm exhausted, or it's much easier to sit down and watch TV, or whatever it might be. But I try, and before I go to sleep, I try and force myself to read something, whether it's, an article on Harvard Business Review, or it's chapter or a couple of pages from the book I'm reading, or a journal article, whatever it might be, but something that I'd expect to learn or take something away from. And forcing myself to do that I mean, books are just, it's like you get to live inside somebody else's head. And I think, and I love leadership books and books from outside of education, especially in big business, because I like the strategies. You know, like big business is sometimes really faceless, and so their strategies mirror that. And then I like to look at those successful strategies and then think, well, how can we put a human face on it and bring that into schools? Because schools are not faceless. We're the complete opposite. And so every day I try and read something, and sometimes I do force myself to. I've recently started writing reviews of some of the books I read, and that helps me to unpack some of those learnings. But yeah, I try to read. That's what motivates me, I think, because if it's just reading and going through a story, like there's a lot of great value in that. But I get really obsessed with making ideas fit to something I can use. And not all of them work. And sometimes I put a lot of work into something and it doesn't work the way I want it to. But that inspiration, that, you know, that spark to even progress through that work of trying to change something for the positive, that I think that's what motivates me. Yeah, it's certainly when I started my career, it was about just coming in and being with students and teaching. And then as I took on leadership roles, I think now it's about looking at whole cohorts and how can we develop something that's not just going to have an impact to one, like a teacher would have impact on one. It's, as a leader, you have a massive cohort, you know, similar to those who work in business. What can we learn from other organizations? Because a lot of strategies in education are cannibalized from older strategies, and some of them don't work, but they get rebranded and tried again. And I think we should look outwards more because we need to do some new things.
Exactly. And there are some big organizations that have developed really good systems that if they are adopted in schools, they will make massive changes.
Yeah.
But we're still rebranding, as you said, all things, all practices, which doesn't work and doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think it's about, we look at curriculum a lot as educators and we try and tailor it to a future that doesn't exist yet. Businesses, or a lot of the businesses I like to look at, they don't wait and they don't imagine what the future might look like. They just try. And that's something that there are safe risks that we could take in schools, and that would mirror the world of work that young people are going into after school. Like, it's very disjointed. School's very protective. And, you know, even moving from secondary school into university is a huge jump in terms of the experience, the environment, how you learn, how you interact with teachers, lecturers. And it's a very disjointed experience. And I think if we were more open to blending and creating a genuine pathway, I think that would make it easier for students to navigate and find the thing that they'd like to do first, maybe over finding the career. Like, where do you want to start?
Exactly. Where do you want to start? And I think that there should be more work done on that part, because like 100% we cannot predict the future and we cannot understand what their future is going to look like. So we cannot prepare them for any future. We cannot just prepare them for who they are, their character, build the character, and then whatever the future is, they're going to be able to just navigate it, right?
Yeah. That's the hope, I think. And that's why I like focusing on connection, because it is just about understanding the people around you, because they're the ones who, with you, will shape what your future looks like. And so if you understand the people, then the challenges of that future will be easy, because the hardest part is working with people. But if we tackle that early, it doesn't matter what the world of work looks like, because we'll have people that understand, what they need to do and what they can do with others and what the group can do. And that's, I think, what education should be. Bring it back from knowledge and skills and focusing on the people.
On the people. Yeah. Tell me more about your book now.
So the book is called The Connection Curriculum. It's the content of the book, for the most part, was I did a few master's degrees over the last kind of 5, 6, 7 years. And I had all the research around student voice and permission and identity and all of these things that I had started to put into this kind of rough plan or framework around addressing connection and bringing people together. And then I was fortunate enough to meet with a publisher who liked the idea, and it was just about then taking that, what was fairly academic, and making it into something that was a little bit more readable, I guess, for everyone. And then the ultimate idea of the book is to help you design a strategic plan. So teachers, leaders, support staff, whoever it might be, but design a strategic plan that caters to building relationships, creating a sense of belonging, and then making sure that everything that you do at school is meaningful. And so the book's designed to kind of talk you through that process.
And where do you get the building blocks from to build this new curriculum, the connection curriculum, let's say?
So there's lots of different things. Quite a lot of it was based on my own experience. So there's not a lot of anecdotal information in the book, but I didn't want the book to be about me. And so I looked at things that I had experienced and then went and found research or, models or frameworks that kind of address that. And then I present that as the solution to that aspect. And so the building blocks of the framework are around 6 key areas that I think need to be addressed so that students and parents and teachers and support staff and your admin and your maintenance and whoever it might be, everyone feels like the school is a part of, not just their day, but it's part of their entire experience, and that it is much like having the conversation with the parent. It is a safe place, because learning is really vulnerable. Like, to learn, you have to open yourself up to that learning. And it's something that without that safety, it's not going to happen. And so, some of those 6 are, as I said before, there's voice. So making sure that community voice is important. So accepting parents' feedback, talking to, people that own businesses around your school, but especially the student voice, and not just those who are leaders and have badges, but the student who might be in behavioral troubles constantly. Speak to them honestly and find out what don't they like about the school is a great question, because they'll be really honest with you. And if there's something actionable there, you can probably start looking at changing it, because the student with the badge is catered to. The student who's consistently having challenges is not being catered to. So voice is in there. Permission is in there. So there's far too much permission seeking in schools. And I think when you are authentically learning, you don't ask permission to go and research something or to go and experience something. You just go and do it. And I think something that I looked at a lot in researching that section was, I have a 2-year-old daughter. And so watching her, she doesn't ask for permission if she wants to figure something out. She just goes and does it. And we lose that. And that should be a core aspect of what schools are. But in there's also school identity and figuring out who your school is and who it's not, and what is the message you put out into the community, because the community will know if that message isn't actually who the school is. And empathy, curiosity, creativity, but there's 6 focus areas that don't necessarily have to feature in any order, but that's the bulk of the book. And each one has frameworks and research to back it, questions, and practical ways to try and make that happen.
And do you personally make time to meet those students that you were talking about, or do you just assign it to other teachers?
So my current role is the head of senior school. So I oversee our eldest students, and part of that is to work with year level leaders and homeroom teachers to create those spaces for students. But my office is right here by the reception, and so my door's open, and parents can see me in here, and students can see me in here. I can see them when they're late or whatever it might be, and there's always opportunities for conversations. And I think, that's of one of the values of this space where I am, is that I feel like I'm right in the middle of it. And that's not always true, I guess, of leaders, especially senior leaders. They're usually behind, the office is down the hallway. Or so I guess I have a unique exposure to what's happening in the middle of the school, which adds a lot of value. And but I think it's always a mix. There are conversations that fit to my role description, and then I think part of my role is to empower other staff to be able to have those conversations too. One of the things I said to my current team right at the start of the year was, you have to let me know what you need help with, because my ultimate aim is, when my tenure is up, I want to have all of you applying for the job and putting the pressure on whether I would, be appointed again or not. My job as the leader, and especially in a wellbeing position, is to build the capacity of the people I work with. And I want them to have my job. And I want them to be able to feel like they can make decisions without my permission, unless it's policy wise, but to feel confident that they know what they're doing. And I think sometimes I feel confident that they can, but one of my challenges for the year is to make sure I'm sharing that so that they can see it, and they know that, if the decision is based in data and it's right for the student, then it's the right decision. And so trying to share that a little bit more, that's kind of one of my goals for this year.
That's authentic leadership to me. That's truly.
Yeah, well, I think it's so important. I think it's something that we don't do very well in schools, is think about succession. And I'm in this role, but it's not my role to keep. And so if I'm not living up to the expectations of the community, then somebody else should be in this role. And it's not for me to hold staff back so that I can keep my position. I need to build them up. Like, that's my responsibility. And if I don't do that, and then I move schools or I go somewhere else, I'm leaving a community lacking. And that's, I've seen that. I've been a part of those situations, and it ends up impacting the students. And so it's not something I want to be a part of.
Yeah. That's a lovely conversation, Matt. And I always enjoy talking with leaders who are influential and who have so much to offer. So for this last part of the conversation, we play a game. I play a game with my guests, a book hack. And I want you to pick a book, and I'll explain the process. I don't know if you can read them. Otherwise,
There's some good books in there.
Yeah.
I think The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Okay. Is it? Yeah. And can you pick a page?
I don't know why I'm thinking about it so much. 129.
129. Okay. Okay, there's a framework here. And just give me a line and I'll try to catch something from here.
Let's go 11.
I don't know how much of a context we have here, but it says, if you're possession-centered, I'm just going to read, I don't know. I'll just read and see what resonates, okay? And we'll talk
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
So your security is based on your reputation, your social status, or the tangible things you possess. You tend to compare what you have to what others have. That's security. Guidance, you make your decisions based on what will protect, increase, or better display your possessions. You see the world in terms of comparative economic and social relationships. That's wisdom. And power, you position within the limits of what you can buy or the social prominence you can achieve if you're possession centered.
So I think my first thought, because it's quite abstract,
It's abstract and I don't
is
understand the context.
it's so
Identifying
I,
your center is the
yeah, I think the talk of possessions took me back to what we were just talking about, and being possessive over a role or a position in school or society, holding on to something that isn't necessarily yours. And I think letting go of that possession and understanding that, yeah, again, it's not your role to keep. Like, you're not in leadership to fulfill or possess that
yeah.
that title. You're in it to create an impact and have some kind of significance within a community. And the reason that you've been appointed to that role, hopefully, is because somebody somewhere at some point has seen a need for you to take on that. And so it's instead of it being something that I possess, it's a gift. It's something that I'm given. And if I choose not to use that gift, then I not only impact me, but I impact the gift giver and everyone else who has put their faith in me to be that type of leader. And so, yeah, that's sounds very impressive when I said it, but that's in terms of possession. I don't think you can be possessive and be an effective educator, because, even from a standpoint of students who don't quite achieve, what they wanted or what they could have achieved, I can't hold possession over that as the teacher. I have to reflect on my practice and be, I guess, confident that I've done the best I can, and then take away the learnings and improve on my practice for the next student. Like, they will be fine and they will find their place in the world. And this is a small disappointment, but it's not mine to hold on to and to keep. Like, they're not my results. And it's the same, I think, with leadership. It's when principals, the most effective leaders I've had never say my team or my school, or it's that's that possession. And that's when ego starts to creep in and you start to make decisions based on the self rather than the community. And so I just don't think possession has a place. And when it does, I think that's when you create that toxic kind of culture that only, again, takes away from the learning, which won't impact some of the adults, but it certainly will impact the young people. And so it's doing the opposite to what schools should do.
This will be a very nice reflection point for some people who are in leadership positions, so they can see whether they're in the possession-centered position or they should move away from it, or they have already moved away from it. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Matt, for this conversation. It's been absolutely amazing. And thank you. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for inviting me. I love having conversations with different people and especially across massive borders, and trying to understand, I guess, not what makes us different or what drives us apart, but what has the potential to bring us together. And I think we look at education and we look at the way different countries do things, and we're so drawn to what's different. And I think in schools, we need to look at what's similar and band together, because there's a lot of pressures on educators at the moment around the world, and that sense of community is really important. So these discussions are always a lot of fun. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.